Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. It's really lovely for me today because I've got Bob with me, who I was at university with, and his wife. So that's an awful long time ago, but it's really nice to be reconnected with someone who has the same passion for well-being and for us to understand our value and to be the best version of ourselves. And we're going to talk about all sorts of things today, but one of the things is Harvard Business Review quote, which says, "We believe the longer we tough it out, the tougher we are, and therefore the more successful we will be." And that I just find so sad and so shocking. But also, probably that is me before I burnt out myself as a school leader. So, we're going to be digging into that a little bit and how, as leaders, we do or don't admit our weaknesses. So, welcome, Bob. It's really great to have you on here. Do you want to introduce yourself to listeners?
Great. Thank you, Rowena. It's brilliant to be here. Yes, so I'm Bob Benson. I left headship of a successful secondary school at the end of August 24. I'm now a coach and a consultant and have the ability now to reflect on education in a way that I didn't before. Often as school leaders, we're running from one thing to the other. We reflect because we have to, we move on. But actually reflecting a little bit deeper isn't something that we do. So I've had a huge opportunity really over the last year, 18 months, to reflect on my time as a leader, on stress, burnout, pressures on leaders, and the pressures on staff in general.
Okay. And how did you manage that pressure as a head teacher yourself? What did that look like?
That's a great question, isn't it? Probably the answer is badly, I would think. You know, we all try and manage it in our own way, don't we? But I think the pressures on being a head are quite considerable. There are opportunities. There's some great things going on, but essentially everything kind of piles in, doesn't it, at times? So I think managing that stress is really something that's quite individual. And also, I think we do it better than we do. I think our loved ones and our dearest are the ones that often say or notice the effect on us. I can remember talking to my wife and feeling that I was doing pretty well. You know, I was doing pretty well, and she looked at me and she said, "You do realise that headship is changing you. It's changing who you are." And it's not necessarily changing your character for the better, because you're becoming kind of tougher and less malleable and less, I think essentially what she meant was less kind. So that really got me thinking. And yes. I mean, I think there are, going back to your question, what ways did I deal with it? I mean, one of the things I always felt was important was to have mentors and coaches. I always wanted a range of people to talk to who are outside my context. Because it is, I mean, it's great, you know, as a head, you've got your team, your deputies who are brilliant. They reflect, they help you with things, you know, you can have that great discussion, but you do need at times just somebody outside who you can just go, am I normal? Is this normal? Is this thing's going on? Have you got any ideas? Have you seen anything like this? And so, yes, so the first thing I would say I did, I just made sure I had probably 3 different people from 3 different places, 2 who worked in education, 1 who was outside, who I could just talk things through with. And I think that helped me in a way to deal with some of the stresses.
Yeah. I'm really interested that you say that your wife noticed, and actually on reflection, you noticed that headship was changing you. And one of the areas for you was that it was possibly making you less kind. Because as a deputy, I was told at one point that I was too kind and I had to stop it. Now, kindness is my most valued strength, actually, one of 3. And so being told I wasn't allowed to be kind in that way was really difficult and uncomfortable, because it felt like I couldn't be me and I couldn't be authentically me. And that was probably one of the reasons that I became so unwell. But why do you think you became less kind? Was that about needing or feeling to cope, that there was a toughness that you needed to have about you? What was it?
Yeah, I think it's a range of things. I think, again, that was said to me, but as an assistant head, can you make the tough decisions? Can you be really tough? There's a lot of that slightly macho culture, isn't there? You've got to be really tough. And so I think there was an element of that. I think there was an element of when you are really beginning to struggle stress-wise, and as I don't think I got to the stage of burnout, but I think there were elements that people would notice. I think you do get shorter and briefer, and there are an elements of unkindness coming in. But I also think that sometimes just the job just, the time, some of the HR issues that people deal with. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough job. I mean, being a teacher, being a leader in school it is a tough job. Interestingly, AI popped up this week with me. I was doing a bit of research and it popped up and saying, Rowena, that a thriving school ultimately looks like this. And I dug into that a little bit and I said, well, what does a thriving school look like? I'd love to know. But it wasn't real. It was like all the staff sit down for half an hour and eat lunch together. And, you go into school and you have half an hour at the beginning to check your emails. And then you go into the first meeting. And then, because there was no reactivity in a perfect AI thriving school, there was no firefighting, no safeguarding, no behavior, no, because of course, in your perfect thriving school, there's no behavior challenge, there's no sickness absence. So you're not spending the first half hour of your day or hour or more covering the staff who aren't in because they're sick. So it's not real. So we are talking about real messy school life here. And, we as leaders, we're as messy and complicated, and we bring all our stuff in from home, don't we? So
Yeah,
there's no point in pretending it's not going to be messy and challenging.
absolutely. Yeah. I think the rush of things in the morning that kind of take up your time, to then be able to, in the middle of that, keep that kind of emotional intelligence and see the one element that comes in where actually you as a leader need to slow down, take time, and actually spend a bit of time talking to this individual is really hard, because you're thinking, well, I've got to get that done, I've got to get this done, I've got to go and see this person, sorry, I can't really talk, but I'll talk later. Having a bit of paper in front of you so you look like you're busy, all those kind of things. I can remember as an assistant head, and I was working with a number of people, and people were coming in and asking me questions, and I felt quite good about it. And then one person came in and they said something, but somehow in my mind it didn't chime with the kind of body language. And I had two choices there. I could either say, yes, fine, just get on with it. Or I could say, okay, just stop. Are you okay? And I did that. And actually it opened a kind of whole thing that this person was struggling. They just wanted somebody to talk to. And sometimes as busy leaders, it's really difficult to use, those whole range of skills emotional intelligence skills that you have, because of as you said, the do this, do that. It's not a perfect school. It's not perfect, is it?
No, it's never going to be. But I love that you gave that person some time, because I think it's Simon Sinek who says that we need to give someone 8 minutes of being listened to for them to feel validated and heard. And
Wow.
actually, 8 minutes isn't very long. But in a busy day in school, I wonder how often we give someone 8 minutes.
Yes. And 8 minutes can feel like a long time, can't it? I think we've done 9 minutes so far. So, 8 minutes, even though when you talk about it, it doesn't seem very long. Actually, when you're thinking, right, I've got to go and see this person, or I'm a bit concerned about that, or I must talk to the caretaker about that, to actually sit down and say, right, I'm going to spend 8 minutes with this member of staff is hard. Or 8 minutes with this student. It's a challenge, isn't it?
It is a challenge. I want to talk to you, Bob, about something you said before we went live recording, which is about whether it's okay as a leader to show weakness.
And that's
What's
a
your view
great
on that?
question, isn't it? It's a great question. Is it okay to show weakness? When you're looking at a head teacher or a CEO, when you're looking at a senior leader, when you're looking at the deputy head who can control everything and sweeps everything up and make sure everything happens, do you want to see them opening up and saying, I'm struggling? And that's a real battle, isn't it? I was talking about an example before we came on air. I once had a staff meeting where I was going to do some real vision casting, and I just had the most dreadful 2 or 3 meetings beforehand. You know, those meetings that stick in your mind, you worry about them, you just feel slightly jarred, and if the world's all a little bit out of focus. And I went in and I thought, do you know what? Do I share that I'm struggling? Or am I, by doing that, actually making the messages that I'm trying to say, am I devaluing them by doing that? And I think as a young school leader, I would say, no, just keep going. Come on, let's inspire everybody. But actually, the more I went on, the more I thought, you know what, I'm going to share this. Not that I'm going to give them 15 minutes of my problems. You know, this happened and, oh, you don't want to be a head teacher. You don't know how. No, just to say, look, it's going to take me a minute or two to be my usual cheerful self, because like many of you, I've just had some really tough things and they're buzzing around in my mind. And that is what happens, isn't it? You know, when we do what is the best profession in the world, you know, when we look after young people's lives, when we spend time with some of the most disadvantaged students in the country, you know, there are going to be times when we're going to be thrown. And actually, I think at that time, being emotionally open was a good choice. But perhaps there are times when, you know, you just want the leader to be strong.
Yeah, I think there's got to be a balance in there somewhere, because in my experience, I've worked with leaders who are machines, who are like robots, and they're not very relatable. And sometimes as a leader, I think if you can show that you're human, you remind your staff that you're human, because often I think teachers look at the leaders and they go, well, they've got it easy. They're not in the classroom every day like we are. They're not killing themselves, you know, managing these really challenging classes. But maybe sometimes sharing something honest and real and quite painful even, um, maybe even about, you know, home life, or maybe
Yep.
about dealing with a parent and how much that drains you. That's okay, as long as, I think, what you say, you're not overloading them with all the emotional baggage of it. I think it's quite powerful message, isn't it? It goes back to Brené Brown talking about vulnerability being the key, the bravest form of courage, or something. That's a bad quote, but as leaders, how vulnerable can we be?
Yes. Yeah. Really important, isn't it? And actually, in the busyness of life, particularly in schools, I've got a statistic here that says only 7% of teachers say they rarely or never feel overworked. So when you are talking as a leader in school, you're looking at 93% of the people there are feeling overworked. You know, that's what they're feeling. So actually, you've got to be careful about the messages. You know, you've got to be careful about timing. You know, finishing 5 minutes early in a meeting, oh, they'll love that. You know, finishing 15 minutes late, doesn't matter what you've said, does it? And so there is a you know, yes, there's a time for being open and honest, but the oversharing, that really can be so unhelpful, can't it?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Rowena Hicks, and I'm so pleased to introduce this course to you. It's a short, practical, made to fit into your current routine course that I hope is going to help you, because I know time is precious. Staff are frazzled at the end of the day, but actually this fits into what you're doing already. So why me? Why this? Well, I burnt out after 30 years in school as a teacher, a Senko, a specialist teacher, even an advisor, and then a leader. I burnt out. I loved it. I was passionate, but I had to leave. And that just breaks my heart. Teachers are leaving and they're going off sick. This has to stop. So what I've designed is 5 minutes at the start of each staff meeting. You can give your team something small and powerful to build momentum. You'll build their confidence. You'll improve their well-being, their team dynamics, their energy. You reduce stress and overwhelm. And you're building habits to increase productivity, energy, and joy. So each week, there is a short action sheet, because really there isn't going to be any change without action, is there? But there's no extra cost. You're going to be consistently investing in time together to shift how staff feel. Are they seen? Are they valued? Are they heard? Give them a voice. These are small microculture changes. You're going to be building your staff team, and you're going to enable them to thrive. This isn't a well-being bolt-on. It's a culture shifting tool built for real schools by someone who's really walked it. So let's stop staff from leaving, and let's help them to flourish and thrive in their roles.
So what is it about, sort of veering off a little bit, about looking tougher? From the Harvard Business Review quote, we believe the longer we tough it out, the tougher we are, and therefore the more successful we will be. What is it about us in education feeling we need to be tough and tough it out because that is success? Because for me, I would say as assistant head for many years, and Senko, and as a deputy head, but all those years I was toughing it out. I felt I had to tough it out because I didn't see there was an option. And I thought that toughing it out and proving, maybe to myself as much as to others, meant that I was more successful. But I'm not convinced by that.
No. And it's interesting as you say that, and I feel the emotion coming from you as I've gone into lots of schools since leaving headship as a coach and a consultant. I can see people in that mode, but it's so difficult to then break in and saying, do you know what? Do you think maybe you're just doing a little bit too much? Do you think maybe you just putting your head down and just plowing on, ignoring those little health issues that come up to do with stress? Do you just think? And it's very difficult to break in, isn't it? Because there is this kind of, I've got to get going, I've got to keep going, I've got to make sure that this happens, and people are expecting things of me. As a school leader, and you'll have found it, there's some really privileged times when people share, things going on in their family. You can be one of the first to know if there's been a death in their family. You can be, one of the first to know about a relationship breakup, or, something really tough, somebody who's had an accident or whatever. And it is a really privileged position as a leader and a school leader to have those honesty. And I think that in a way drives that determination to be right. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. I mean, I also partly blame some of the training, and I know some of the leadership training that I've had early on was all about tough leadership. It was very little to do with emotional intelligence, looking after. I think the balance has probably changed a little bit, but even so, there's an awful lot about, being very clear about quality assurance, making absolutely certain that things happen. And I think the other thing is a reflection on responsibility. As a school leader, you feel the pressure on you, and particularly as a head, this is my name's on the door. I've got to get everything right. It's ridiculous, isn't it? You can't get everything right. Of course, you're going to make mistakes. And as soon as you make mistakes, the more responsibility you have, the more public it is. But you do feel that pressure as well, don't you? I've got a community here who's relying on me. I really need to get this right. And I need to be determined and push on through whatever.
Okay, so to the leaders here who are listening today, and they're sort of going, yeah, we're trying to tough it out because we're really on survival here. We're struggling. We don't know how to manage this. Yes, I hear you saying, get a coach. And, I'm a coach. I love coaching people like you do because of the changes we see. I mean, I had one amazing leader who said to me last week, I can't ever be enough, can I? I can't ever do enough. And of course, that was in the 58th minutes of a 60-minute session. But actually, coaching is great. But what on a day-to-day sort of messy, chaotic school day life, what would you be suggesting that leaders or teachers do? Because maybe toughness is a bit of protection.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I remember hearing a school leader saying to me, I've worked every day of this year, including Christmas Day. And I think, do you know what, that the first thing to say is, just if that's where you are, just stop and just think, come on, I've got to have a break. So I do think that there's got to be a time when you actively switch off. And that might be leaving your mobile phone at home when you go for a 2-week break. Actively doing that, giving somebody else the responsibility, because schools are 24/7, 365. There's an element of responsibility, and actively turning off. And those were some of the most amazing times for me, when I actively got away, just with myself and the family. We're completely focused on that. I wouldn't look at anything. So I think that's really important. And I think something you do for yourself, obviously exercise, there's a lot of research and I'm sure there's a lot to be said about that, but something you do for yourself that you really enjoy. If you've always enjoyed singing but never done it, could you actually do it just once a fortnight? Could you join a little group? Could you do something? Well, I couldn't possibly because it's every Thursday. Well, maybe you could. And actually, maybe you'd be a better leader because of it. If you love horse riding and you've always wanted to get back on, you stopped when you first started teaching, you'd never gone back. Could you actually start doing that? One thing for me was running. I started running during COVID, as many people did. And, I ran for, probably up until my mid-20s. And then just life got too busy, didn't it? And just that idea of getting away for half an hour, I would say 3 times a week, but I'd be lying. But anyway, just getting away for half an hour for a patch a week. And just, when you're running, you can't think of anything else. All you can think of, oh my word, I've got to put my next foot in front of the other. I'm too old for this. What am I doing? But something that you do, and that is very individual, just making sure that is protected. And even if just talking about that with your team and say, look, on the Thursday night, I'm really going to leave slightly earlier than usual, but why don't you do it on a Wednesday? And why don't you do it on Tuesday? All find something. So, and actually, as a result of that, we'll be better leaders because we will have switched off, thought of something else, used our voice, gone running, whatever it is.
I love that, because research shows that when we do that and prioritize that, we become more productive, more creative, more energetic. It's mad. It's so obvious, but we don't do it. I mean, I don't know what you would say to the leaders listening to a friend of mine who, when I challenged her one day a week to leave on time, and she said that if she left before 5, heads would not, it would be really frowned upon, because that's not the ethic and the way things are done at school. And she's in school at 7 o'clock every morning. It's not that she's not putting the hours in. And it made me really sad. But I wonder if there's an expectation in schools that could be changed, because I went into another school and the head teacher said, I'm out by 4:30 every day. And I go around and check my staff are too. And there has to be a very good reason for them still to be in school, because if they can't do it in those times, then there's something wrong. And I want to meet with them to help them do it smarter.
Yeah. I mean, there's a real element at the moment of some younger leaders not wanting to go and become deputies and heads. And that's because they are seeing these kind of automatons who are just there all the time. That's their whole life. There's nothing else to them. And they're thinking, I don't want that. And I think it's really first of all that making that example, and saying, however vulnerable it feels, I'm going to do that. And I'll tell you why I'm doing that. I'm doing that because I think it's important. And I don't mind if you don't see my car in the car park, because I'm going to do that on every Thursday, or I'm going to make sure I do that at this time, and there is something about making yourself feel validated. Got it. If you are looking busy and you are always there, somehow, well, they must be important because they look busy. They're there before I come in and they're there after I leave. And I remember feeling that pressure when I was trying to leave early, thinking, oh, if I'm here later than them, will they think I'm not doing my job? And so there's an element as a leader, you've just got to, by example, saying, I am going because I believe it's the right thing to do. Whatever the culture, as a head, as a senior leader, you set that culture and you can then decide, you know what, that's the way I'm going to lead. I don't care what people think. That's the way I'm going to lead. And actually, then younger leaders will say, well, if they can do that and still have a bit of a life, well, maybe I can do it too. And then actually what we do is we draw the best people into leadership, which is a fantastic kind of circle of happiness.
Yeah. I think you really did hit on something really important there, which is whether we perceive ourselves to be more important, be more successful, have more value if we put more hours in, if we're seen to be busy all the time. And actually that's not how it works, because the research shows that if you work smarter, you don't have to work longer. If you have more exercise and more rest, you can work faster. If you use clever habits like maybe the Pomodoro or other things like that and have less distractions, then you're going to work faster and you're going to be more creative. So actually, we need to buck the trend of the expectation of what is important, what is successful.
Yeah,
Because what does really outstanding actually look like when we go back to the children? It's an amazing, creative, exciting lesson at the end of the day, isn't it? That's engaging all those hard to reach kids. And we can't do that if we're not our best.
absolutely. Absolutely. And my challenge to leaders who are listening to this and who are saying, well, I probably don't do too badly, but actually acknowledge that they do work too long and that other people say that and their family says that, is come on, break the mold. If we want to make a difference in teaching, if we actually want to change the culture where, 46% of teachers decide to leave in the first 10 years, 30% leave in the first 5 years. If we're actually going to break that mold, it's actually got to be school leaders making bold decisions. And in this case, it's not bold decisions about the curriculum, or about vision. This is about well-being and how important it is, and saying, do you know what, I'm going to do this because I think it's important.
I absolutely love that. And I've just to tag on the end here that part of the new course that I've got coming out, which is 5 minutes at the start of every staff meeting of a well-being, it's a bit like a well-being fist bump, and it gives strategies and challenges the team to change their habits and their mindsets. And part of that is the challenge to look at how many hours are you working and how are you working, and is your team healthy? Are you noticing if your team is healthy? And things like that, because it all makes such a difference to how we are and how we approach our day. Bob, you've shared so many nuggets in there. It's just lovely. If people want to find out more about you, where would they find you?
Yeah, if people want to find out more about me or they want to ask me a question or whatever, then just have a look at LinkedIn. You'll find me, Bob Benson, on LinkedIn. And love to connect with people, share some ideas, and be in touch. More than happy to be in touch with anybody, particularly, and I'm sure you're the same, particularly those leaders who are saying, do you know what, this is tough at the moment, because there's some great leaders out there who should really be leading for the next 10 years. But actually, they will, for that longevity, there are some habits, there are some support they're going to need. So yes, LinkedIn, please look me up on LinkedIn. You can find it. And I'm sure the link will go out with this anyway.
Yeah, we'll put the link into the show notes and everywhere we can, Bob, and in the newsletter. So thanks everyone for listening. And I really hope that you're encouraged today that yes, leadership is tough, teaching is tough, but there is hope and there are strategies, there are mindset shifts, there are habits that we can learn to do it differently and to do it boldly and bravely. So I hope that's encouraged someone out there today. Bye for now. Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.